The morning sun broke over the plains of Brenham, Texas, casting a golden glow on a sprawling ranch, now caged by a gleaming chain-link fence. A black man, rugged and resolute, stood at his property's edge, coffee mug in hand, staring at the barrier that locked his cattle from their water source. The Pine Valley HOA, cloaked in claims of neighborhood standards, had built the fence overnight, their notices branding his land a blight, a thinly veiled jab at his presence. Neighbors watched from a distance, their silence heavy, as the HOA's president, a woman with a polished smile and iron will, held the only key to the gate controlling his access. But he wasn't defeated. From his pocket he pulled a single key, the one to a gate he'd just bought, turning the HOA's trap into their own prison. This wasn't just a fence. It was a stand against prejudice, a bold move that would unravel a community's biases and spark a legal firestorm. Who was this rancher? How had he outsmarted a system built to exclude? His victory would prove that. No lock could hold back resilience, leaving a legacy that echoed far beyond the Texas plains. Brenham's open fields stretched wide, where dust and dreams intertwined under a blazing sun. At the heart of this was Isaiah Coleman, a 47-year-old black rancher whose 60-acre spread was a legacy of sweat and sacrifice, inherited from his father, who'd fought to claim it in a world that offered no favors. Isaiah, a single father to his 17-year-old daughter, Maya, worked his land with quiet pride, teaching her the rhythms of cattle and crops. His ranch, with its sturdy barn and rolling pastures, stood in contrast to Pine Valley's gated estates, where the HOA enforced rules with an iron grip. The HOA, led by Eleanor Price, a 58-year-old white real estate broker, wielded power through petty citations, rusted gates, overgrown fields, each one targeting Isaiah's ranch, hinting at his outsider status in a whitening neighborhood. Whispers at board meetings called his land an eyesore, a coded slight against his race. Isaiah, undaunted, studied property laws by lamplight, his resolve rooted in his father's tales of lost deeds and hard-won rights. Maya watched, learning, from his strength. When the HOA announced a fence to secure the community, Isaiah saw their intent, to choke his livelihood, to erase his place. But he was ready, his mind sharp with a plan to turn their prejudice into their defeat, setting the stage for a battle of cunning. The chain-link fence rose like a steel cage around Isaiah's ranch, its posts driven deep under cover of night. The HOA's contractors had vanished by dawn, leaving a barrier that cut his cattle from the creek and his fields from the county road. Notices arrived, stamped with Eleanor Price's signature, accusing Isaiah of violating bylaws, threatening fines or foreclosure. The community buzzed. Neighbors, mostly white, avoided his gaze, some nodding at the HOA's move, others silent but uneasy. The fence was more than metal. It was a power play, rooted in HOA meetings where Eleanor labeled Isaiah's ranch a disruption. Her words laced with bias. Isaiah stood at his gate, boots sinking into the earth, his eyes tracing the fence's gleam. He'd heard his father's stories, land stolen, rights denied, but he was no victim. Months earlier, he'd spotted a half-acre parcel beside his ranch, holding the only gate to Pine Valley's gated community. The parcel, owned by a retiring rancher, was for sale. Isaiah drained his savings, secured a loan, and bought it through a discreet LLC, keeping his name hidden. The HOA, unaware, tightened their grip, sending inspectors to photograph his barn, citing visual inconsistencies. Eleanor's letters urged him to sell, her tone smug. Maya, helping with chores, saw her father's late-night work, county records, zoning laws, HOA bylaws. Isaiah uncovered violations. The fence lacked permits, its placement illegal. He met Sarah Ellis, a young black lawyer with a passion for justice who saw the case's weight. "This is about more than your ranch," she said, drafting an injunction. The HOA planned a meeting to rally support, oblivious to Isaiah's counterstrike. Neighbors whispered, some calling him defiant, others sensing the injustice but fearing Eleanor's influence. The tension escalated as Isaiah attended the HOA meeting, the clubhouse thick with the scent of coffee and tension. Eleanor stood at the podium, her navy suit crisp, announcing fines against Isaiah's ranch. "Mr. Coleman," she said, her voice sharp, "your fencing fails to meet community standards." Isaiah, folder in hand, replied, "This is a ranch, not a suburb. My fence keeps cattle safe, not lawns pretty." The board dismissed him, citing rules, but Isaiah pointed out inconsistencies. Other homes with varied fences, none locked. The day, crowd shifted, some uneasy, as Eleanor's smile tightened. "Comply, or the fines continue," she said. Isaiah left, his resolve hardening. Days later, a water crisis hit. The fence blocked the creek, stressing his herd. Isaiah hauled tanks, exhausting his resources as Eleanor sent more notices, claiming his tanks were hazards. Neighbor Clara Ruiz, a retired teacher, warned him, "Eleanor's done this before. She'll wear you down." Isaiah nodded, his gate key hidden, his plan nearing fruition. The HOA's next meeting loomed, where they'd push for new rules to tighten control. Isaiah prepared, his LLC purchase nearing closure, the key his weapon to flip the script. The Pine Valley clubhouse was packed, fluorescent lights casting a stark glow over neighbors clutching agendas. Eleanor Price stood at the podium, her voice cutting rallying support for escalated fines against Isaiah's ranch, framing it as a threat to community aesthetics. The crowd nodded, some eager, others hesitant. Isaiah entered, his boots echoing, a single key glinting in his hand. He stepped to the microphone, his presence commanding. "I bought the gate lot," he said, his voice steady. "This key controls your only access. You fenced me in. I locked you out." Gasps erupted, Eleanor's face paling as she grasped her error. Isaiah presented documents, proof of the HOA's illegal fencing and discriminatory intent. Sarah, his lawyer, filed an injunction on the spot, her briefcase snapping open. "This ends now," Isaiah said. The hall exploded in chaos, neighbors shouting, Eleanor's authority crumbling. The climax was a blaze of justice, Isaiah's key unlocking not just a gate, but a community's hidden biases, turning the HOA's scheme into their defeat. Isaiah's revelation shattered the HOA's control. His gate key forced negotiations, the HOA scrambling to avoid a lawsuit. Sarah's injunction exposed their unpermitted fence and pattern of targeting minority homeowners, backed by county records and neighbor testimonies. Eleanor resigned, her reputation in tatters as the board paid damages, dismantling the fence, under court order. Isaiah's ranch thrived, his cattle grazing freely. The gate key shared with neighbors who apologized for their silence. Maya, inspired, pursued law school, mentored by Sarah, who earned statewide recognition. Pine Valley reformed, new bylaws banned discriminatory practices, and a community council formed, including Clara, who pushed for equity. Isaiah's story spread online, news outlets hailing his triumph, sparking debates on HOA reform and racial justice. Social media buzzed, with Acre Gate Key Justice trending, as viewers shared stories of similar battles. Isaiah stood on his ranch, watching the sunset, his father's legacy secure. He reflected, the key in his pocket, knowing justice wasn't just in winning, but in inspiring change. Neighbors now greeted him openly. The fear of the HOA broken. The resolution closed with Isaiah driving past the open gate, his ranch vibrant, a symbol of defiance. Clara's words echoed, "You gave us courage." The tale ended with a call to action. What walls will prejudice build next? This story proves that those who hold the key can tear them down, a legacy of resilience for all who fight for their place.